Hello, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast, You Are the Masterpiece, where we constantly remind ourselves that we do not have to be perfect as long as we are taking the effort. And we are the work in progress and we are the masterpieces at the same time. So do not bounce on yourself, just accept yourself for who you are and learn to love yourself where you are on your journey because you are never ahead of time. You are never behind. You are right where you're supposed to be in this moment. And if this is the first time you are tuning in, hello, my name is Irina Portnova. I call myself Manifestation Star because I manifested consciously great things in my life. And that's what I'm teaching each one of you, just to step into your power and start creating magic in your life. And today I have my dear guest, Tamara Lashchyk. Tamara, welcome. And we are so happy and excited to have you with us. Can you just share a couple of words about yourself and what you are doing?
Yes, I'm so honored to be here. So thank you for having me. My name is Tamara Lashchyk. People call me Tammy for short, if that's easier. And I am an executive strategist and coach. Prior to being a coach, I spent 26 years working in financial services and navigating the male dominated arena of Wall Street. And I've taken all the business knowledge that I've acquired and combined it with an immensely interesting journey that I've had over the last 5 years, where I too started to learn about the powers of the universe, manifestation, and how your thoughts and your mind can create your reality. So I've combined both those two disciplines, and now I'm creating magic as well.
I love that. Can you just share a little bit? Because, there are a lot of people who are sitting at their jobs and they are not happy, but they are so scared to move away and do something different. Can you just share a little bit, like what actually start you on the path that you are in right now?
Yes. Well, I always say that I really began the journey 5 years ago, but in reality, we're on the journey since we're born. And
Mhm.
there were definitely events in my life that put me more on the journey. And when I say the journey, a journey towards awakening and living in consciousness. So when I was 18, my mother passed away very suddenly at a young age. And when you have this immense pain in your heart, you become very open to anything that will relieve some of that pain. And a year after she died, I met my boyfriend who became my husband and then my ex-husband. But his mother was very into personal development, and she had
Mhm.
gone through a very bitter divorce. And so she had introduced me to Deepak Chopra and Roy Masters and many of what she called spiritual gurus. And I immediately took a liking to this personal development space. So while it had a spiritual bend to it, and I was working in a very secular industry, I ran sort of these parallel lives. And I implored the things I learned in the spiritual realm into my job at Wall Street. In fact, in 2018, I had written a book. It's a career guide for women on Wall Street. But one of the chapters talks about your energy and the energy that you're carrying with you. And at the time, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now after learning so much about energy and what it really means, how it really works. But I already had a clue. And if you're in that sort of secular space, you would refer to it as business instinct or hunches or anything like that. But what that really is your higher mind guiding you. And then in 2019, after a 26-year long career, I was fired by a woman who was my boss, and she was leaving the firm for retirement. And I already was disappointed with the industry because it changed so dramatically after the financial crisis. So I was no longer really happy and was sort of looking over my shoulder on as to what I was going to do next. Now, she fired me in the most egregious way 2 days before she left for retirement. And I was supposed to take her job and run the team. And I wasn't actually mad or upset about it. Of course, it wasn't optimal. I didn't want to leave a stellar career with a perfect track record in this manner. But I also knew enough at this point that the universe, when it wants to send you a message, it throws pebbles. And when you don't listen to those pebbles, they become boulders.
Mm.
And I knew that I was already getting the hint and that tap on the shoulder from the universe that I should be doing something else. But I was scared, like most people are. The money was too good. And I, had developed, this structure that was working for me, or I thought it was working for me. And when she fired me, I knew that this was the universe saying, enough, you're going to do something else. So I believe that we are always being guided. And whether we listen to those taps on the shoulder from our inner voice or not, it is there trying to catch our attention, giving us signs, and trying to lead us in the direction that we want, that deeply we want to be led in, that our soul wants us to go in. But then we have something called the conscious mind, which is in conflict. It starts to negotiate with us and say, what are you doing? Stay put. You have a good job, collect that paycheck. You can't do that, and just kind of trying to convince us, to stay safe and play small.
Mhm.
So those are sort of my thoughts.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing. And I love the topic that we are on today, the art of confident negotiation. And I know that you are helping people to make these bold decisions and to actually speak up their truth. Can you please tell a little bit? Because again, when it comes to the negotiation, it's the skill. And
Yes.
everybody can actually train themselves to be skillful at that. So, can you just tell us what are the main points of confident negotiation?
The main what? I'm sorry.
What points, the
Oh,
main
okay.
points or the steps, whatever you wish to call?
Yes. Yes. So having been on Wall Street for as many years as I have become quite good at negotiating. And there was a time in my career where I too was underpaid. In fact, there were several times in my career that I was underpaid. I might have had a boss who didn't really like me, and there was a lot of politics involved. But very early on in my career, when I was first underpaid, my aunt, who works in a factory, she said to me, if you want to play with the big boys, you need to go and ask for a raise. And I was working at JP Morgan at the time, and it was a very white shoe, blue-blooded firm. And I scoffed at my aunt and said, this is just not done at JP Morgan. We don't talk about money. That is considered improper. And she called bullshit on me. And she said, men are doing it all the time. And the reason you don't hear about it is because it happens behind closed doors. And she called me out on my BS. And
Mhm.
so I mustered up the courage to go in and ask for a raise. And what I learned was and I tell clients to do this too, I started to make it a matter of practice to go in and have a salary discussion, whether I was due a raise or not, only to make sure that once, performance reviews are finalized and, they give you the raise or the bonus or anything, that there's no disappointment.
Mhm.
Everyone knows already what you are going to get. So I like to always have this discussion as a matter of practice every single year. What I also realized is that having a conversation or negotiating only once a year is not going to give you enough experience and practice. So you need to be practicing all the time. Now, people say, well, when can I practice? But the reality is, you can practice every single day because every day we are exchanging money. We are exchanging money for goods and services. So anytime money changes hands, there is an opportunity for negotiations. And I tell the story all the time. I once walked into, I had just moved into Soho in New York City, and I walked into a little juice place next door. And I looked at the prices and the juice menu, and the juice was something like $12 for a medium sized juice, which I thought was outrageous. But I was living in New York City now, and so I ordered a green juice. And I'm watching the woman make the juice, and she's looking around for spinach. And the juice had kale, spinach, and a whole bunch of other ingredients. But it was critical to have spinach because it cuts down the bitterness of the kale. So they're out of spinach, I could tell. So she whispers to her boss, and he must have said to her, put in more kale. So I'm watching her, she's putting in more kale. And I say to her, excuse me, are you out of spinach? And she's like, we are. And I go, well, then don't double down on kale because now the juice is going to be too bitter. And you don't get to charge me $12 if you don't have all the ingredients. And since that juice is almost done, I will pay $6 for it. And it was a take it or leave it situation. She looked at her boss and he agreed. And so I got the juice for $6. But
Mm-hmm.
I do things like that all the time. Whenever something seems like it's off in terms of value versus cost, I always view it as an opportunity to negotiate. And once you have that mindset of you're always negotiating or always looking for imbalances, it gives you tremendous practice. So when you're ready to then go ask for a raise, it's second nature.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, it's also, people must always remember, and I know it's hard to do because it's your livelihood, but having a conversation about your salary, it's just a conversation. The meaning you get, the meaning you give it, that is on you. And a lot of what that comes from is emotional baggage from unhealed wounds that we have regarding our relationship to money. We make this mean something beyond what it actually is, which is really just a conversation. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
bring in all these issues of, you know, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve this, or, you know, your parents saying, you know, money is evil, money, you know, all these, whatever it is that we feel about money that is deeply embedded in our psyche, we're bringing into every conversation about negotiations. So this
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things I work on with my clients to clear those, to help heal and clear those wounds and let them go. So a conversation about money and your salary just becomes a conversation as easy peasy as the weather.
I love what you're sharing. You know, as you are talking, what downloaded to me, the power of ask. It's not only related to, you know, negotiating the salaries, but anything in life, right? Because a lot of times we have this harmony where we are givers, 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 but when it comes to receiving, we do not know how to receive. So it's also a lot of you know, like all these core beliefs that we have about ourselves, and for some reason we were ashamed to ask, right? It felt like you know, like we are just begging for something. But I'm very confident when I'm asking. And you know what, it's interesting because like you mentioned that you were underpaid at one time. You know what I learned when I came to this country? I like, oh, it just, you know, like it was my inner knowing. I realized that confidence is going to take us far.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was a good observer. I was remember I was working for this firm, and they had the IT department, and they just hired that manager. And what I realized, that that manager did not know exactly what he was doing, but he was great at delegating the responsibilities to his employees. And that was my realization, is like confidence is really taking people far. So what I really realized for myself, I wasn't sitting at the job more than 2 or 3 years, because all I wanted just to gain the experience, put it on my resume, and go for the highest salary. That's exactly how I was just, you know, climbing the ladder in my case. But again, whatever works for everybody, right? The only thing is that is we are learning how to ask, and we feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, confidence is absolutely key. But the question is, why are some people confident and others are not? And where
Mm-hmm.
does confidence truly come from? Now, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you can fake it till you make it for a while. The more you have a command of the subject matter, the more confident you become. But confidence also is very much rooted in, again, your childhood and those formative years, where you were growing up in your house and how your parents treated you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, your body is really keeping the score. And so you might be saying affirmations to yourself, you might be doing all the work, but deep down inside, you might have some kind of deep visceral feeling about your worth and your value that could have been implanted by, your parents. And it may not have even been anything that your parents did wrong or said that was wrong. It was your perception of how you received that information. And I'll give you one example. My younger brother was always telling, and he was 8 years younger than I was, and he was, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 at the time I was a teenager. And my father came into my room, and it was like 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was almost like noon. And my father came in, and I was sleeping, like most teenagers do. And he said, "Princess, are you going to wake up? Get out of bed. I think it's time for you to wake up." And then he goes into my younger brother's room and he's like, "Darian, wake up." And he was sort of rough. So my younger brother, I heard him recently even tell this story. He's told it many times. And he describes how my father would treat me like I was this princess prima donna, as if he like carried me around on a silk pillow. And I heard him tell this story, and I said to him, so this was his perception that I, got this unfair treatment relative to him. But the reality was that my father was a wise ass and
Mm-hmm.
he came into my room in that high pitched voice, mocking me, making fun of me. Like, "Oh, your highness, are you going to
Mm-hmm.
wake up? Are you going to greet us all with your presence?" So it was this sarcasm. Okay. But my younger brother didn't know this at the time, and he perceived it to be, my sister is this prima donna princess and she gets everything handed to her, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just not fair. So it's not even the reality, but it's your perception of the reality.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, I love that story. I love that story. So if somebody hesitant in doing any negotiation, what would you say they have to start from?
I think that they need to start from writing out all the things that make them good and all their accomplishments, and quantifying them as much as possible. So if you increase revenue for your company, or if you save the company money, so really writing out and doing it over time. Like, don't just sit down and do this once. Like, yeah, sit down and start, but leaving that piece of paper or that notebook aside, and as more things come to mind, continue to add to that list. Because oftentimes, especially with women, we don't give ourselves enough credit for some of the things that we do. And when things come easy to all of us, male or female, then we think, "Oh, well, this is just so easy for me to do." And we don't think there's any big deal about it. And so we don't note it or tote it as an accomplishment. So really keep a running list of the things that you really do and the impact that it has, because that will give you a lot more confidence. And, researching also is really important. Know how much your job is worth, know how much other firms are paying, know where you're falling on the pay scale. So that will give you more confidence, because you will start to see it in black and white. And that will start to program your mind that, wow, I really do a lot. And you will start to gain more confidence.
Mm-hmm. And I love it. And I think the rehearsal of the conversation is also helpful when I'm talking about the manifestation, right? we always rehearse time what would we desire as the outcome of it. And it's good, the more we already program in our mind for that success, I guess we are going to be hesitant less and less, right?
Yes. And I mean, you nailed it. And the thing is, the reason I was so interested in doing, this podcast with you, this interview, is because this is the magic, the secret sauce that I have really learned over the last several years. So again, I learned the tactics and strategy of negotiation by being on Wall Street. But in the last 5 years, understanding energy and understanding the universe and the power and manifestation, that became a game changer. And when you do understand these sort of metaphysical principles and you can bring them into your day job, you will see how much more your success will grow. So all of it, I mean, my core, my digital course that I've created, yes, it has tactics and strategies and research this and all that stuff. That's all the stuff that you could just download online. The real secret sauce that nobody's teaching, nobody in salary negotiation will be teaching this. Only people who do manifestation and this type of spiritual work really understand this. It is what you are embodying and what you are exuding in terms of energy, and what are you thinking. I had my neighbor, I was sitting outside, she came from work, and I said, "How was your day?" And she said, "Ugh, I had my performance review and I went and asked for a raise." And I go, "How did it go?" And she said, "It didn't go so great." And she goes, "Well, actually, it went as well as I thought it was going to go." And I
Mhm.
thought to myself, again, I'm not going to coach her without her permission, but I thought to myself, this is why it didn't go well, because you went in with that intention and expectation that it wasn't going to go well.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we don't realize that our body language is speaking on our behalf. And when you are vibrating at a frequency where you're already scared and you think it's going to fail, and you're bringing and you have all this baggage from childhood and years of trying to negotiate it, not working, that's created fear and reconfirmed all those things that we learned in childhood, like all those messages get reconfirmed, because that's how the mind works. It tries to validate what we believe to be true in order to give us evidence that it's true. So you have this mountain of evidence saying that it's not going to work out, and then you go in and it doesn't work out, and here's more evidence for you. But it is really shifting your vibration and your energy by doing all that clearing work to get you vibrating at a frequency. And it's so powerful that I can negotiate without even saying a word. I come in, I know that it's going to go my way with 100% certainty, and I decide on the number that I want or what I want to pay for something. And lo and behold, the person will be like, "Hey, I'll make a deal with you. I'll give this to you for this price." And it's like exactly the number that I wanted or better. So, it's so incredibly powerful. And I wish I knew this to the point I know it now when I worked in corporate.
I love that. I love that. So, how do people reach out? Do you have any free resources for them to look at before they
I
come to your space?
I do. I do. I've created a salary gap calculator, which allows you to put in your current salary, what you think you should be making or what you want to make. And there's a number of other variables you have to put in, like the number of years and things like that. And it will calculate how much money over time you are losing by being underpaid. Women don't realize this, and most people don't realize it. Even being underpaid by $5,000 over time will amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you really want to negotiate as best you can in order to get fair value for the job that you are doing, because literally it's going to cost you a lot of money. And the other thing is too, you really don't have much time. We have about 5 more years before majority of the jobs start getting swept up by AI. So now is the time to really negotiate that, get as much as you can in your corporate job, so that you have, the money compounds and you can invest for your retirement. So,
Mhm.
and I think the best way will probably just to reach out, DM me through LinkedIn. I did put a link to, I did put my LinkedIn and my social media. It's just Tamara Lashchyk pretty
Yeah,
much
to
on
to
every
connect with
platform.
you. Mhm.
Yep, and
Yep.
I'd be happy to send you the salary gap calculator. I could also share the link to the salary gap calculator as well with you, Irina, if you want to post
Mhm.
it somewhere as well.
Yes, sure, sure. Well, thank you so much. It was a very great interview. I love the energy that was flowing. And for anybody who feels that they want to uplevel their skill of confident negotiation, reach out to Tamara. She's an expert on that. And Tamara, thank you so, so much again. It was a pleasure to have this time with you. And everybody else, see you on the next episode.
Thank
Bye.
you.